All right, everyone. Looks like we got a good crew coming in. Appreciate it. So welcome to the second session of the Leadership Conference. This next hour or so, hour and a few minutes, is focused on Tier 2 hockey, and really a roundtable discussion that both Greg Chudikoff, the Tier 2 chairman for AHAI, and Kerry Zach, who is the VP Operations, and as some of you know on the phone, chairs the Tier 2 President's Council for AHAI. So they're going to take you through some conversation, and I'll turn it over to Kerry, and we can talk a little bit about what we're going to talk about tonight.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Tonight, just a few discussion topics. We're going to talk about the Tier 2 substitute choice applications, the new player movement rule, recruitment violations, officer and board member credential requirements. I'm going to give a brief Tier 2 President's Council update, and then just a bit of info on fall tryouts and team commitments. So Gretchen, if you want to move to the next slide, and Greg, if you want to start discussing the choice applications.
All right, the substitute choice applications will be online starting on July 15th. Once the applications are applied for, the Tier 2 committee will review the applications and vote on them, yes or no. If you are denied, or you will hear from me, and there will be 3 appeal hearings this year, same as been going on for the last 3 or 4 years. The first meeting will be August 12th, August 25th, and September 8th. The deadline for applying for a substitute choice is September 12th. The locations for the appeals are to be determined. We are thinking on having them in person. So we are waiting to see how things go and see how everybody goes with, COVID. As of right now, we plan on having in-person hearings. So that's my take. That's my whole deal on substitute choices. That's all I have.
Okay. Greg, can I just add one thing in there?
Yes, go ahead.
Gretchen, can you move back? There's been a lot of questions regarding this past year, the 2021 season, if those choices would count. So just to reiterate that it's a case-by-case basis, so everyone still needs to fill out an application. All right, Gretchen, if you want to move on to the next slide. All right, Greg, the player movement rule.
Okay, you want to go over that, Kerry?
Sure. So this is the updated player movement rule. It replaces the 2468 that was previously in there. Now it goes down to, it's a 234 rule right now. I know you guys have seen this. It was a lot of discussion amongst the Tier 2 presidents. It's 2 squirts, 3 peewee, and 4 bantam. There's no limit on the 16U and 18U. If you had a player that played for your organization prior and has choice with your organization, this does not count against that. So does anyone have any questions? Okay, Gretchen, on to the next slide.
I'm sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
Kerry, Ryan McGuire from the Warhawks, just real quick. I was reading the rules and regs for the girls. It's not 234, it's still 246 there.
Right,
Is that
and
true?
I know Anita is going to go over the girls' updated rule in the girls section.
Okay.
Yes, this is Todd Finner. I did have a question regarding that as well.
Sure.
I was kind of curious as to what the purpose is. I was not involved in any of the discussions. I was not aware of it until just the other day, and I was kind of curious as to what the purpose is. We're adding tier one options for players, a fifth charter, and cutting player movement in half at the tier two level. And kind of wondering what the overall purpose or intent was of that ruling.
Okay, so it was something that was presented to the tier two presidents from an organization. And pretty much one of the main purposes was that originally the 2468, that went for 8Us as well. Since the mites, the 8Us do not count as a choice.
Right.
It was felt it was time to update it. So there was multiple discussions amongst the tier two organizations, the presidents, and based on the feedback from there, that was where it came from.
So the purpose was to help foster
Cut down on some of
growth,
the
or
player movement, cut
Yeah.
down on some of the player movement. Recruiting had been one of the biggest complaints that we were fielding from a lot of organizations.
right?
And that's where it came from.
Okay, we just sat through a discussion on how to grow the sport. And for those players, you know, you're looking at 5 tier one options, and I'm assuming the purpose of tier one hockey in Illinois is to give a better development opportunity for elite sports and to further development of these clubs. Now, if you look at the tier two grassroots level of hockey, where the majority of registered players are likely playing, you're talking about a sport level where you lose 5 or 6 players to tier one hockey. What about those solid players who either don't have the financial resources or the time resources based on a number of different family members that are left? It really kind of weakens and dilutes the possibility for further development, which again comes down to the neighborhood discussion. I live in Elmhurst, so you know, we're not investing $20,000 for my kids to have a chance to play college hockey. So, you know, unless you can afford to play tier one hockey, it continues to get weaker and weaker at the tier two level with increasing amount of regulations about this type of player movement in the state. It's really, these type of things, in my opinion, lead to an elitist approach that unless you can drop down, you've got 2 or 3 kids playing hockey, 70 grand a year, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah. Todd, if I can jump in there on a couple of those points, and I get understand what you're saying. If you don't look at this, I quite frankly, maybe it's not labeled as the best. Player movement is maybe not the right terminology, right? Nobody's saying that a 10U player from the Blues can't decide to go to Glenview, right? They can, right? They can go to any one of those clubs if they have the choices available, right? All this rule is saying is that on any one team, right, you can only have up to two players on that team, right, from another organization. It's not telling anybody they can't move anywhere, right?
Sure.
You're free to move. It's just limiting what you can take in as opposed to what can move. So same thing at the 14U level, right? I mean, if the previous rule, 2468 at 8, you could literally have half of a team at a club be transplanted by another 8 kids that were from outside that club, right? And so tier 2 is community-based hockey. I mean, that's what it is. It's what it should be. And so part of this is to kind of not to limit the movement, but to say, listen, if you're going to go in and take a bunch of 12Us coming into your program, you can't take, you know, if you have 4 clubs, that's 12 or 15 new 12Us that can come into that program, right? So it really has nothing to do with tier 1, right? Tier 1 is open hockey. You can go there and play there anytime you want, try it anytime you want. And if you make it, you make it. If you don't, you don't. So, you know, look at it from that perspective, as opposed to we're not limiting anything really. We're just telling you, hey, you're going to take a bunch of 10U kids into your program. You can only have 2 from outside of it. And that means 2 that have never played there before. So at 14U, if you had a kid that played for you and then went to Glenview and came back, that person doesn't count, right? They were part of your program before. So that's kind of the intent of it. The movement and it does 2 things. One is it also helps the clubs be a little more stable, right? because the last thing you want where you're at, and I know when I was running a club, is all of a sudden I've got 35 kids that get up and go, right, and take off and go somewhere else. And now I'm sitting there with ice and commitments and all that as well. So there's a lot that goes into it. So I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, I understand that. I mean, I guess I'm confused by community-based hockey. Does that mean that community-based hockey is no longer, that these kids playing community-based hockey don't really have an option to pursue competitive hockey, to have a dream to maybe go play college hockey or professional hockey, that they have to go to tier 1 hockey to remain competitive? Or
no, I think from my perspective, and anybody else can certainly chime in, is it's really up to you and the programming you provide, right? What are you offering those kids? And if you're offering them that good competitive, good coaching, good development, then that's what we should be doing. And I know you do. I've known you for a long time. So
we certainly try.
Absolutely, right? And that
Todd,
is the key to it, right?
Todd, I think one of the biggest issues why this passed and why people wanted this is to stop from some of these smaller clubs such as yours to lose good players to other organizations, and you take 3 or 4 players off your top team, and now they could go play for whoever. And that's the reasoning for the player movement. There's just been too many situations and too many, times that this has been going on for years, and we want to try to put an end to it. And I think this is going to help it. It's going to help keep your players, keep other clubs from losing players. And I think that's the reasoning.
Sure. I understand we had a 5th tier 1, and I'm looking at the big picture, not necessarily just the tier 2 scenario. We had a 5th tier 1 club. Everybody feels that if their kid's going to go anywhere, they have to play tier 1. You lose 6 players. What about those good players that remain? Initially you had practice games set up with middle of the pack out of state tier 1 teams that are good competition, good matches, very challenging. Now you lose that ability to have those competitive.
Something, Todd, there's not, so it's no different. Now you got another tier 1 organization. It's up to the clubs to try to develop their own kids and keep their kids within their own organization. And hopefully this will help. There's nothing else we could do about it. I mean, that's the way it is. Now you got the pyramid is shrinking. Okay. Tier 2 hockey at the highest level. Now you got 20 kids from all 35 organizations are going to be less. So you got to do the best you can amongst all the organizations to try to keep your kids and develop your kids to be the best you can be. So that's my take on it. Kerry, do you have anything else?
And Kerry, if I could, it was a good comment in the chat too, right? Is there's 2 things to look at, and that's kind of what I was trying to get at earlier. And Julie kind of summed it up better than I was probably doing, is what is good for the club versus what is best for the development of the kids, right? And so that's the balance that you try to weave here, right? And first and foremost, it should be what's best for the development of the kids, right? And that goes back to my point, is that as clubs, as associations, as coaches, developing our kids and giving them the right programming is paramount, right? And then secondly is at the club level, right? What's best for the club. So we've got to work in that order. And in talking to a lot of folks around the country, I know others have as well, that all the movement doesn't necessarily help the development of the kids, right? It's what are they chasing? Where are they chasing? What are they getting when they get there? And then they're not happy. They're moving to the next one. And so.
I understand that, guys. You certainly want to look after the kids. I sit there after a tier 1 tryout and I look at probably 3 kids as good as any of the 6 that left for tier 1, stuck with, really deserving players to play at that level that they can't afford to play tier 1. Their parents don't have the time to drive to a tier 1 facility, and they're stuck.
But they still have you still have 2 choices, Todd.
Right, but they don't have time to drive to Glenview, or they don't have time to drive to, hey, where's the next?
Well, then if they live next to you, they should be in your club already.
They are.
Kerry,
and they're remaining in the club.
Carrie, go ahead and move on to the next subject.
Okay, Gretchen, can you move to the next slide, please? All right, so there's been a lot of changes to the website. Just wanted to point it out to you guys where you can find pretty easy to find on the website. All right, Gretchen, if you want to move on to the next one. Next thing, we just talked briefly about recruitment violations. So Greg wants to discuss how you file a complaint and some plans for the upcoming year moving forward. So go ahead, Greg.
The recruiting has been going on for years. We got to try to put an end to it. I understand the clubs are involved. Some coaches are doing it. It's also coming from the parents. We have to try to stop this. Now, if there is a recruiting violation, it needs to be a written complaint to myself, and I will take it to rules and ethics, and there will be sanctions against the person who does the recruiting violation. We are serious about this. It's a rule, and we need to stand by it. Now, the violation could be up to 30 days. We don't know what it could be. It's going to be a sanction complaint and rule and a violation. So we're very serious about it. We got to put an end to it. We've been hearing about this for years with all the clubs. Now, if we get a written complaint that this is happening, we will put a rules and ethics committee member and do a investigation. And if we find a violation, they will be sanctioned. Carrie?
All right. Gretchen, if you can move on to the next one. All right, so officer and board member credential requirements. First thing, the biggest reminder is registrars of the club need to update the organizational contacts. All the email communications that like I send out to the presidents goes through that. So if your president has changed, treasurer, R&E person, registrar, hockey director, make sure that that is updated with the correct contact info. But the one other thing too is make sure that all your board members, any volunteer, has to register with USA Hockey. It's free, there's no charge. And your registrar needs to put that into the portal. They have to do their safe sport, and then they have to do their screening as well. So we can't emphasize that one enough. So Gretchen, on to the next one. So President's Council updates. Right now, we've currently been meeting Zoom. Starting in July, we're gonna start the third Thursday of the month. I think the first one we'll do Zoom. Notification will go out a week earlier. And then that way we can see how everyone's feeling about meeting in person, or if we're gonna continue them Zoom. So it's a third Thursday of every month. It's actually on the AHAI website on the calendar. If you guys have any questions or there's any ideas of topics of discussion, you can send it to me. All right, on to the next one, Gretchen. All right, fall tryouts and team commitments. I know everyone's getting ready for fall right now and getting their packets together. Just a couple of reminders that tryouts cannot be considered as making a commitment to an organization or a specific team. That goes along with the financial commitment. You can't charge for the full season with tryouts. To be separate fees. Once offered a position on a specific team, the players must commit to the organization its financial requirements for the fall season. So just a reminder on that, since last year was not a normal year. Okay, Gretchen, next one. All right, I mean, that's now we have time for open discussion. Does anyone have any questions or topics that they want to discuss? Are there any questions on any of the topics we talked about other than the?
So I missed when you were talking about the fees for the season. we can still, like, when we charge tryout fees, we can say, okay, tryout fees are this much, and we would also like your first payment of the season.
And that one, Greg, did you want to touch on that one?
I thought that, I don't know, was that an AHAI rule or was that a club rule? Jim, do you know the answer for that one?
Yeah, I don't know that it's a rule that we have. I haven't seen it.
Because I know there are clubs that say, you know, you come try out and, you know, you have to pay $1,200, and if you decide to leave after you make a team, we keep 500.
Yeah, I think it comes back to the, you know, keeping the tryouts are not considered a commitment to any organization or team. So if somebody tries out for $250, they don't make, you know, they don't make a team, or they don't, you know, they leave in the middle of tryouts or whatever, you keep the $250, right? I think that's the basis.
Right.
Laura's on.
So some clubs will have to change their policies.
Laura Johnson's on, because this is a registrar question. I'm not sure how many other registrars are on. Laura, did you want to
Comment on that?
Yeah, thank you, Carrie. It's a great question. It's something that we've been encountering more and more the last couple of years. And the AHAI board's consensus has been on this, that you can charge for tryouts, but you cannot charge for part of your season and hold that money if that family decides to skate elsewhere. You cannot hold them, in essence, obligated to you until they accept a position within a specific team in your organization. We've been seeing this occurring more frequently to try to, for organizations to try to have people feel as if they're committed, but you really can't do that.
That's
But it's been going on.
I know it's been going on.
Indeed, it's been going on, and it's
I mean,
been a problem. And families have come to AHAI and complained about that, because you can charge them to try out, but you cannot charge them for part or all of their fall season until they've accepted a position on a team with your affiliate organization. And until they do so, you cannot obligate them to pay you.
Okay, so no club will be allowed to do that this year.
That is the communication. I don't know that it should be communicated. Maybe that's a good thing, Carrie, for you to take to your tier 2 presidents meeting to make sure that everybody's on the same level of understanding as to how that works. Because in the past, those that have protested it, they were given their money back.
correct?
Yes.
Thank you, Laura.
You're welcome. Let me know if you have any other questions.
All right, any other questions? All right.
Hey, wait, can I go back to
Sure.
Greg?
Yeah.
Sure, go ahead.
What, you know, when you were talking about the recruiting and all that, and he goes, a lot of it has to do with parents. Well, you still can't call out a parent.
No. But
You can only make complaints about people, coaches, or board members from the one organization.
right.
Perfect.
Yes. But I think as a club, you need to tell the parents, if they are doing it, to stop it. Because I don't think that's good for your organization, and it's not good for any other organization. So that's why we're just trying to stop it. And I think if the clubs do what they're supposed to do, and if we do what we're saying we're gonna do, we can put a pretty good end to recruiting. We'll try. And by doing this, hopefully it will work.
All right, any other questions or comments? All right. If you guys think of anything else, or you have ideas of topics for the President's Council meetings, certain things you guys want to talk about, please feel free to shoot me an email. Greg as well, and any other questions regarding any of the rules, anything like that, please feel free to contact us.
One other thing I want to bring up, for the substitute choice, I know that clubs have asked in the past to be notified if some of their kids from their team are trying to move to another team. I will try to do a better job this year in communicating to the clubs to let them know if they are losing kids so they could try to keep them.
Hey, Carrie, I do have a question around, the both the player movement, the two choice rule. Are there guidelines that AHAI gives organizations while registering for tryouts, questions to ask so that we can be aware of that during evaluation and selection process? And if so, where would I find those list of questions to be put in the registration for tryouts?
Those are great questions.
Yeah.
First thing would be any players you have coming in over the summer for tryouts. The first question is, do they have an available choice? Where did they play last year? Depending upon your registration system that you guys use, there is an option. If you do use Sports Engine, there is one on there, and you could make it mandatory where they would have to put in what team they were on last year, where they played for. So that would be able for you to be able to track it. So it's really important for you guys to talk to your registrars to make sure they're monitoring everyone that's coming in for registration, to ask those questions, make sure they have an available choice. Where did they play last year? Prior to tryouts, prior to team selection.
Carrie, may I say something too?
Sure, of course.
Thank you. Ryan, just make sure that that you need to educate your parents, because the girls' rules are slightly different. So make sure that when you're working with your registrar and you get your flyers and your information out there, that you really review Article 17, which is the girls' women's section article with all the rules there. While there's a lot of similarities between Tier 2 youth and Tier 2 girls, there are a few things that are a little different. So I would ask that you make sure that you follow the correct set of rules.
Yep.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Anita.
All right, Ryan, did that help?
Oh, Ryan Reeves ain't playing either.
That helped, Carrie. Thank you.
Laura, you have your hand up? You have a question?
Thanks, Jim. I just wanted to add a couple things. First of all is, please encourage your registrars to attend some of these sessions. I don't believe that the message went out, because I'm a registrar for a couple of the AHAI affiliates, and I didn't get a notice. So I would encourage you to pass the information on for attendance to these sessions to your registrars. The second thing I wanted to let you know is that if you have any questions about player history, your registrars can always contact me. I won't, I'll give it to a parent if they're requesting about their individual player. I don't release that to coaches, but I will release that to registrars. I have a player history database that I can easily look up for you. Just ask your registrars to send me an email, and I'd be happy to provide them with player history if you have any questions about whether they have a choice available, etc. And if you have questions about any of that, I'm always a good resource as well, and I welcome your calls.
All right. Thanks, Laura. Okay, there's one question in the chat regarding the recording. And Gretchen should have those up next week. They would be up probably Tuesday, right, Jim?
Yep, they will be up on YouTube. Tonight's will probably be up on YouTube by tomorrow afternoon. And then they'll be up on the websites by next Tuesday at the latest.
Okay, thank you.